Real life.
Say if I turned up with my daughter, who is 16, to your rooms and asked about a breast augmentation for her, what would your answer be?
If I see sometimes young women, usually the mothers or the relatives are not tremendously supportive.
Heather Stott.
Paula Hall is a psychotherapist and sex counsellor for Relate. By the way, are you married?
I am married, yes.
Oh, yeah. How long have you been married?
4 weeks.
Are you joking?
Oh, 4 weeks in, it's pretty damn good, yeah.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, we'll check back with you next week. See if
20 years' time, yeah.
Heather Stott. Monday morning from 9 on BBC Radio Manchester.
Lest you forget. Hello, how are you? You all right? Good. I'm Allan Beswick, and we're here till 2 o'clock, probably. Yeah, unless they drag me out kicking and screaming before then, or I'll fall down dead. That'd be a good way to go, wouldn't it? Sitting here. Yeah, that'd be nice. That would be lovely. Or not. Whatever. 0161 228 2255. You want to talk to us, that's fine. If you don't, well, that's all right as well. I'm not bothered. You can email radiomanchester@bbc.co.uk. So that's nice, yeah? Or, of course, you can text me on 07786 206 951. How much easier do you want it? You can also, I tend to do this on a Friday, you can also communicate via snail mail. That's an unfortunate sobriquet, but in some cases accurate, for the Royal Mail. I'm not at any point here alluding to that. Yes, I know. I'm not making out the suggestion that the royals are snails. They're not. They don't carry the houses with them. They don't have to. They've got one in every county. Anyway, the address for that is Allan Beswick, P.O. Box, well, BBC Radio Manchester, obviously, P.O. Box 951, Manchester M681ST. That's it. And I read them all, because the good news is, in this job, you used to get hundreds of letters. And now you don't. You get emails instead. And you can't... It's like wearing a three-cornered hat. Getting a letter. It is. It's like wearing a three-cornered hat. Or being gracious. Did you hear that bloke from the... What was it? It's not the Polite Society. I remember him. Bad-tempered bugger. No, the Campaign for Courtesy. That was it. We do a bit of that here, don't we? We like a bit of courtesy. We do. I'm always courteous. I always say hello. I always say goodbye. Sometimes there's not much space between the two, but that's not my fault. It's not. I take no blame. No blame for anything. Unlike the McCanns, who are now taking some blame. Yeah. In an interview with the BBC yesterday, well, last evening. Well, even that's wrong. It was broadcast last evening. Anyway, in the interview, they spoke to one of the 7:30, and we referred to her yesterday, saying, where were her kids when Madeleine was being snatched? And I think it's a fair question, and I don't know whether it was asked, but if it was, the answer's not in the paper this morning. But what is in the paper, and it is to be welcomed, what is in the paper is Jerry McCann saying, we made a mistake. We made a mistake, and we would never do that again. He also made the point, if I read correctly, or if the newspaper articles distill correctly, then he also said that it's not an unusual mistake. It's the kind of thing that most people do. And he says he's had legal advice, and the legal advice tells him that the behaviour, leaving your child whilst you go round the corner for a meal with friends, leaving your child in that way, is within the bounds of normal and therefore legal parenting. That's the legal advice he's had. Now, I think that legal advice is correct. I do. I think what the McCanns did, whilst utterly stupid, and I've said this before, what the McCanns did whilst being utterly stupid is repeated even now. Not only even now in the United Kingdom, but I suspect last night there were people staying in that holiday complex with their kids who left them in their room whilst the adults went out for a meal. I would put money on that. I'm not much of a gambler, but I'd put money on that. So there it is. There it is. I think it was within the realms, within the parameters of normal and therefore legal parenting. My criticism with the McCanns is it's taken them almost a year to say that. Now, you could argue, if you're one of those people that believes in all that spiritual crap, that they were in denial. Well, we all know the joke about being in denial. It means you've fallen off a boat near Egypt. But people do. People deny that they've made a mistake to themselves when it is too hard, too painful to deduce and follow the consequences therefrom. So now that they've said, yeah, we made a mistake, I'm comfy. Nothing to do with me at all, but I'm comfy. Now that they've said, yes, we made a mistake, I think it's a lot easier for cynics like me to say, yes, you did, and you're paying far too great a price for it. Far too great a price for it. And that applies to anybody else who makes that mistake this weekend, and they will. You pay far too great a price for it. It's not quite the same, but parents who let their young children play out and then their young children get run over by a car or something. They didn't even make a mistake in that case. They just allowed their child a little more freedom than perhaps was good for it. But it's going to happen. Accidents happen. The Americans have a phrase for it. I won't use it, but they use a word that ends in it. And they say, shh. Exactly. They say, happens, crap atoms. It does. It does. We'll never stop it. And frankly, sometimes just trying to stop it damages society anyway. Listen to all that health and safety stuff. You keep hearing people, and it's a shame to have a go at the health and safety officers. They're doing their jobs. They're doing what they're paid for. They're pointing out the dangers of things that you might be embarked upon. But we sting them, don't they? We criticise them all the time. We say, health and safety officers, blah, 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 blah. Well, the reality is, into every life a little rain must fall, and into every life a lot of danger must fall. Because if it doesn't, you won't be able to cope when it does arrive, as it inevitably will. 0161 228 2255. Got something to say? Fine. Fred in Whitefield. Hello.
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 Hiya.
Hiya.
You'll have to excuse me. I'm just finishing laughing at something I've just heard. I rung you up last week about the 10p. Do you remember?
No, I don't think I do, but go on, because a lot of people talked about it last week. But
yeah,
anyway.
I talked about the idiots, you know. Anyway, I've just listened to the news about this prison.
Yes.
Where the druggies are breaking in and the inmates don't want to escape. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
And the government don't want anything to do with it. I thought that was brilliant.
Right. What's brilliant about it?
Well, it just shows you what the jails are like, doesn't it? They can break in, but the inmates don't want to come out.
Indeed. but the interesting thing about that, Fred, is the ones that break in don't stay.
And those that are in don't want to come out. That's the point. Come on, you've got to bloody laugh at it.
I'm happy to laugh at it if only it was true.
It is true.
It isn't true.
Why?
Because it's not true.
How do you mean it's not true?
It's not true. There's no other way of...
They're putting the news over. They're telling lies, are they? It's not... They're broadcasting lies.
They're not broadcasting lies.
Wow, what they're doing if it's not true?
Well, the person who says it says that he is surprised that the prisoners don't use the well-trodden path of those that break in to break out, and then says that they have such a good life. The reality is that they may well have a good life, but given ample opportunity, most of them would stay in jail, because if you break out and you're caught, not only do you have to complete your sentence, but
you're talking bloody rubbish here.
I may well be, Fred. I may well be. Why is it then, Fred? Why is it, Fred?
Go on.
That two of the jails that we have in the northwest, where prisoners are forced to share cells that were designed for one person. Why is it?
That's a pity.
Why is it? Why is it, Fred?
You're breaking me,
Fred,
You're
Fred,
breaking me
Fred,
heart.
Fred,
You're breaking me heart. I'm crying.
I'm glad to hear it, Fred. It's good to see you have an emotion.
I have.
I'd be more grateful to break the wax in your ears so you heard the question. Why is it that in a prison where they're two up in cells for one, they are not breaking out? Why do you think that is? Because they love it?
Of course they love it.
OK, as long as we've got your facts.
Wait a minute. Hang on a minute.
Listen.
Hang on. I want to talk to you about the what's it.
I don't know what the what's
This
it is.
government.
All right.
The government.
All right, go on, the government.
They've done a U-turn, haven't they, on this 10p thing?
They've said they're going to, yes.
Yeah. But they're going to have a means test, aren't they? They're going to means test it. Everybody's not going to get compensated.
Well, we
The
don't.
poor slobs who can afford to be on low pay, they're going to still take it off them.
We don't know yet. We don't know yet, Fred.
It's bloody crackers.
We don't know
It's
yet.
crackers.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
Listen.
We don't know
They
yet.
took it off everybody. Well, it was on the news. They took it off everybody. But
What?
they're going to
Fred,
get it.
Fred,
The under-25s,
Fred,
the
Fred,
single under-25s are
Fred,
going. Oh, come on.
Fred, what we know, and all that we know, is that the government have said they will compensate. What they haven't done yet is told us how.
They have.
Oh, right.
Oh,
Go
they
on.
have.
I must have missed it then.
Well, they have missed it.
And I'll tell you something
Well,
else.
the
Do you
under-
know what?
oh,
Do you want to know
listen.
something? I'm not the only one that's missed it because...
Of course you have.
Because the Conservative Party, who were there, the leader of the Conservative Party, has put down a motion to have a debate to find out what's happening. But, of course,
Do
all
you
they
not,
should...
do you not listen to news, like?
I do,
Are they
Fred.
all telling... Are they all telling
Fred,
lies?
Listen, I'll tell you what I'm going to do,
Are they all
Fred.
telling
Fred,
lies?
Fred, I'll tell you what I'm going to
Give
do.
me a straight answer.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Fred.
If the news comes on the
Fred,
telly, are they
Fred.
telling lies?
I don't know, Fred.
Well-
I'll tell you what I'll do here. I know this.
You know it.
I know that. Listen,
Oh, you-
listen,
This is God's gospel.
listen,
God's
listen,
gospel.
listen,
Truth.
listen,
Cross your
listen,
heart.
listen,
Cross your
listen,
heart.
listen. I'll cross my arse. Listen. Here's what I'm going to say to you. Now, the Conservative leader, I know this.
I'm not going about...
Are you listening?
I'm talking
You're not
about
listening,
the
are you?
Labour
Listen,
Party,
Fred.
the Labour
Fred,
Party.
Fred, I'm going to... Fred, I'm going to do you a favour. I'm
Yeah.
trying to do you a favour. I know you don't
Yeah,
want one,
it's
but
hard.
here's the
Get
favour. Here's the favour. What I'm going to do... Oh, he's gone. There you go. Thank God for that. I was trying to help him. What I was going to do, I was going to give him the Conservative the Conservative leader. I was going to get in touch with him, David Cameron, give him Fred's number, because Fred says he knows what Alistair Darling's going to do. And the Conservative leader says he doesn't know what Alistair Darling's going to do. Well, I don't know how we get round that. It's fascinating. I think we should have Fred leading the opposition. It'd be great. Then we would have some fun. 0161 228 2255. If you have something to say, that's good. All you have to do is pick up your phone and say it, even if you're Fred. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk if you want to do it by email. And, of course, you can text 07786 206 951. I don't know. You see, sometimes with Gordon, I get an email and my brain's moved on to from the moment when he sent the email. But maybe you'll understand it, and if not, ring Fred, he'll explain it to you. But it says, but would they be able to lift you up? That's the question. You see? Now, I don't really know what that means. I don't even know to what it pertains. But never mind. 0161 228 2255. All you've got to do is pick up your phone and have you say. It's dead easy. Yeah, all right then. Well, OK, it's not dead easy, but it's easy enough. And it's cheap. Oh, God, it's cheap, yeah. 'Cause once you've got through, we ring you back. Oh, you don't have to sit there. Well, you do. You have to sit there till we get around to you. But you don't have to pay whilst we're doing that. Well, I say you don't have to pay. You've already paid, of course, because it's all paid for out the licence fee, which is rather nice. Do you feel Do you feel you've been cheated over Victoria Baths? If you go back to the television programmes, BBC, if you go back to the television programmes, I am reliably informed that it was never said that they would be redoing the whole of the baths. That was never said, apparently. But when I watched the programme, that was the impression I got. I suspect others got that impression. I know it was never said, ever. But I kind of felt it was. Not said, but that's what was going on. Save Victoria Baths. Well, that's not what's happening. They've saved the building. And they've saved they've refurbished the Turkish baths. But it was never the intention that they would do the whole bath, because there's no point of it. The reason I mention it is the chairman, I think it is writing in the Manchester Evening News this morning, because there's been a couple of letters, a few letters in the Evening News over the months about the Victoria Baths and about, what's happening and all of that. And they do keep their publicity to the fore, and rightly so, because we all have a right to know. But it's Linus Smith, the chairman of the Friends to the Victoria Baths. I read with interest comments about Victoria Baths. As chairman of the Friends, I can assure him that we share his sentiments. We've fought since 1993 to keep these baths open, not only as a place for local people to swim, but to preserve this magnificent Victorian Edwardian building, one of the most significant swimming baths in the country. We've made considerable progress on the conservation front, but still have a struggle to preserve the swimming. Well, they can't preserve the swimming because it's not there, but I know what he means. Do you feel cheated by it all? 0161 228 2255. We can talk about anything, obviously.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news.
The Manchester-based co-op's being investigated over the price of its cigarettes. The Office of Fair Trading are also looking at tobacco manufacturers and rival supermarkets. BP's to close a major pipeline bringing oil and gas from the North Sea because of the strike at the Grangemouth oil refinery. The plant, which processes oil, is on the same site as the refinery and relies on it for power. And police are looking for £20,000 worth of mobile phones stolen from a lorry in Warrington. It's thought the 540 mobiles were taken in the early hours of Wednesday morning. Manchester's weather, a bright start, but there's a good chance of rain later. Highs of 14 Celsius. I'm Richard Stead.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Starting out firstly on the M56, and traffic seems to be moving along fairly well from Junction 9 at the Lim interchange through towards Junction 12 at the Weaver Viaduct. East and westbound traffic coping well for the moment, and we seem to be moving at a fairly steady pace as well along the diversion in Hyde because of the closure of Market Street between G Cross and the M67 Slip Road. Don't forget, of course, gas maintenance work continues today until later on in June. Elsewhere in Upper Mill, we have restrictions on Dobcross New Road around Wool Road. That stretch is closed off whilst work continues on Brown Hill Canal Bridge, again with a diversion signed locally for you. Now, I'm not aware of any major restrictions or delays on public transport. If, of course, you know different, call in. Make sure it's hands-free, and it's 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
Decongesting Manchester, one car at a time. 2020 traffic.
Frank in Stretford. Hiya, Frank.
Now then, young Alan, I'm getting worried about you.
Oh, good.
You know how it's generally accepted that as we grow older, we tend to mellow?
Is it?
Well, it's sort of, I think it's kind of accepted, but you're going soft in your old age. I'm getting worried about you. That last caller, 2 or 3 years ago, you dispatched him with the off switch in about 10 seconds flat.
Well,
you have the patience of a saint.
I'm not sure that that's true, but go on.
Well, I mean, if he had a brain, he'd be dangerous for starters.
Oh, that's a bit harsh.
I don't think it's untrue, though, do you?
I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting involved.
Anyway,
go on.
You've got a reputation to uphold. A no-nonsense professional broadcaster wasting valuable broadcasting time with a complete total plonker.
Oh, that's not fair. You see,
fair.
No. I maintain that everybody has a right to an opinion.
They have. But he wouldn't allow you to have yours, would he?
Well, I get plenty of time to express mine. I'm not short of opportunity to express my opinion, and I think we're here to give everybody the opportunity to express theirs.
I have the greatest respect for you.
You're not achieving it, I'll grant you.
I'm not, am I, you swine? I have to come back with a better one, won't I?
Oh, you will indeed, yes.
Okay.
All right, well, good on you anyway. Thank you very much. 0161 228 2255. It is weird, but I do believe that. I do believe that everybody is entitled to an opinion. And in the overwhelming, now notice the difference here, in the overwhelming majority of occasions and people, they also are entitled to express it. Now, there are certain restrictions. There have to be. So I won't allow everybody to have their say on this programme. Probably a lot more people, a broader range of people than elsewhere, but not everybody. Not every opinion, because some opinions are just beyond the pale, aren't they? If somebody wanted to come on here and argue that the Nazis were right, I wouldn't tolerate that. I wouldn't sit and listen to that. I would listen to comments that say a certain section of our society, whatever section it might be, have no right to be here or do not make a full contribution. I'm perfectly happy to carry that, but not the next step, as it were. So, broad church. We are a broad church, is what I say. 0161 228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. Daily Mail reports. I don't know whether they've got the statistic from. I suppose I should have read the article in detail to find out. But the Daily Mail reports that there are 60 people shot every week. 60 victims are shot each week as gun crime rises. We were celebrating yesterday, weren't we, the reduction in violent crime in Greater Manchester. This is not Greater Manchester, this is the national figure. 60 people a week are being wounded as gun crime continues to rise. This is according to Home Office figures. Firearms incidents rose by 4% last year to just under 10,000, meaning that guns are now featuring in almost 30 offences a day. 30 a day. Again, nationwide. The number of people killed or wounded rose to 3,048. The crime figures also showed a dramatic 20% year-on-year rise in the number of drug offences recorded by police in England and Wales. The figures have now jumped by more than 50% since 2004, the year in which David Blunkett downgraded cannabis from Class B to Class C. The number of crimes recorded by police showed a 12% drop overall, including a 5% fall in burglaries. But the Home Office's British Crime Survey, based on interviews with the public and also released yesterday, showed domestic burglary up by 5%, reversing recent fall. So that's a bit weird, because one is a statistical report and the other one is what you might call a perception report. What is the perception of people who were surveyed, whether it's up or whether it's down? And you do sometimes get different results from such things, which is fair enough. What do you think? Do you think, I mean, we celebrated. There was a front page story on the Evening News, wasn't there, that said Michael Todd's, the late Chief Constable, Michael Todd's legacy to Manchester, a reduction in crime. Does it feel to you like crime has diminished, or is it indeed the opposite, the sensation? Because the numbers are just the numbers, isn't it? They're just the numbers. It's how it feels that matters. We don't do things on the basis of statistics. We do them on the basis of the sensation. Hi, Alan, says Paul. Regarding Fred, he must have been one of those that escaped from that prison he was talking about. Do they know where he is? I don't think they do. It is weird. One of the senior prison officers, or one of the senior prison office union officials, said today that prisoners are, I mean, papers are extrapolating from it in different ways, but what he said was that people are not escaping from prison because it's the life of Riley. And there's even suggestions that, and I find this one really, really interesting. There are so many drugs available in prison that apparently they're being smuggled out to sell. So my thought is, why doesn't the person who smuggles them in and thus risks getting caught, who presumably then smuggles them out and thus risks getting caught, why doesn't he cut the middleman from the equation and not smuggle them in the first place? It's just the logic of it, isn't it? They smuggle the drugs in and then somebody else smuggles them out to sell them. Why? Why doesn't the bloke who's smuggling them in find out who the customers are on the out that want them and go straight to them? I know. I could set up a business here if it wasn't a crime, but it is. If any enterprising drug dealer is listening, just particularly if you're one of that small band of drug dealers who climb over the prison wall with a ladder, presumably with a bag of swag, predominantly Charlie, cocaine or whatever. So if you're smuggling, if tonight at about 1 o'clock in the morning, you've got your ladder ready to climb over the wall of Strangeways with a bag of cocaine to sell to the prisoners so that they can then smuggle it out up somebody's bum, or however they do it, I'm not sure. Smuggle it out up somebody's bum so they can sell it to some drug user in Manchester. Can I recommend that the chap with the ladder who's going to climb over the wall of Strangeways tonight with a satchel full of cocaine, can I recommend that instead of doing that, because you could fall off the ladder, there are dangers here. You could fall off the ladder, you could be caught, you could drop your bag. That would be terrible. There's so many things could go awry. Might I suggest to you that you just go into Manchester and find out who's buying the drugs that have been smuggled out the prison and sell them to them. I'm not advocating drug use or even drug dealing, but if you are going to do it, can we have a bit of efficiency, please?
Allan Beswick, BBC Radio Manchester.
Very good day to you. Terry in Tetherington, hiya.
Good afternoon, Alan.
Good afternoon, sir.
As you know, we've spoken before, and I have to respond sometimes to your programme. I can't help it. You mentioned about the Whitworth Street Baths, the ex-High Street Baths as it used to be called. Are you there?
I am.
I used to attend that baths from school. We used to walk about 3 miles to get to the baths, and that was the enjoyable part of it. It was the austerity years, just after the Second World War. But the place was a dump. I think 3/4 of the class detested getting in that place. It was a mausoleum of rubbish. And Manchester seems to always try to rebuild what they've... I mean, I'm not a Catholic, but the monastery in Gorton, they wait till it falls down, they want to spend millions on it. The same with Bagley Hall. They spent millions on that, and it's closed down. Manchester seems to want to wait till things fall apart and then rebuild. But I'm not a person who drinks a lot, but one thing they could have preserved was Tommy Duck's pub in Manchester. They waited till a Sunday morning, pulled it down, and now they built something else. Whereas the general public used to enjoy going in that place because it was a hostelry, looked about the Dickens time, where in London it was preserved, but in Manchester, demolish it.
Who do you blame? I mean, the pub particularly. I mean, certainly Victoria Baths. Yes, we can blame the local authority if we want to, but the Tommy Duck's, that's not really much to do with the council. They can't make a pub proprietor, whether they're a multinational company or a local bloke. Yes. They can't make them carry on with the pub.
I understand what you're saying, Alan, so I'll concede that. But there does seem to be we seem to be in an area where we destroy what's decent in the town and put up monstrosities. I can't help but feel that the High Street Baths, the reason why it fell apart, because it was disused, and it'll be disused again. I used to live quite near it, and never wanted to go near the place. And I don't think I'm the only one that thinks that. There's been I'm not a royalist, as you will remember. I'm not by any means, but what Prince Charles thought of the place on his innermost thoughts, I wouldn't like to hazard a guess, but he must have thought it was an awful bloody place.
Well, I don't know. I think Prince Charles is one of those, and I wouldn't want to put words in his mouth, but I think Charles is one of those at the forefront of preserving the old rather than allowing them to fall down or be knocked down and replaced with something modern.
I concur with that entirely. That's the only thing he has merit as far as I'm concerned. He does try to look at buildings, you know, in a different eye. You know,
you see, you're
preserve
talking...
the best. So that's the only thing I've got time for him for. The rest of it, no chance.
Well, all right, but Victoria Baths, or High Street Baths, as you insist on calling them, because that's what they were. But,
yes.
But is it, I mean, yes, they fell into disrepair and beyond that into dilapidation. Of course they did. But that's not a reason to write them off, because I get the sense, Terry, that you're arguing against yourself, really, because you're saying you'll never step foot in the place again. Well, OK, but if they could be brought back to pristine glory, as in their early days, but, of course, with all the modern technology to make the water clean and all the rest of it, that would be a wonderful thing, wouldn't it? Not one that we ought to criticise.
I agree with what you're saying in a sense, but it wasn't all that an old... I think it was built about 1902 or 3, so it wasn't old, and I was going in the 40s, so it wasn't an ancient building then. But the pool itself used to consider about a dozen cockroaches floating around for the start off. It was a dead lost place. I detested it, you know, I really did. And not, as I say, out of a class of, say, 45, I think 30 or 30 of them used to detest it as well. I'm quite convinced I'm not the only one who thinks we're trying to, you know, keep a thing going that really should have been pulled down, and something sensible place, if only a memorial tree.
All right, a memorial tree. It would have saved us an awful lot of money, though, wouldn't it?
It would indeed.
Good on you.
No?
Thank you, Andrew. Bye-bye now. 0161 228 2255. Victoria Baths should be allowed to go, and we'll have a memorial tree in its stead. What a nice thought. 0161 228 2255. Here's the detail for Fred and anyone else that's interested. The Conservatives have put down an amendment to the finance bill which would force a debate and vote on the government's package of compensation measures for those who've lost out because of the abolition of the 10p tax rate. The amendment is to be considered on Monday, and it would force a vote when Alistair Darling sets out the government's plans in detail in the autumn. As I said to Fred earlier, we don't actually know what Alistair Darling plans to do. We've got the headlines of his intent, but I think there's a lot of wriggling to go on before we get to the moment when they announce what the compensation package will be. I was rather interested to hear that one of the things they're considering doing is compensating the losers, as it were, the elderly losers. Elderly is the wrong word, but the retired losers. It would appear that there is a body of people between the ages of 60 and 65 who somehow lose out. I don't quite understand the economics or the arithmetic. There's a body of people between the age of 60 and 65. So what they're going to do is somehow pay them a little more in their heating allowance, a compensatory amount in their heating allowance, to take account of that. I don't know that that is a sufficiently precise tool, and you could end up with the situation that there will be amongst them people who have not lost out getting compensation for something that didn't happen to them. And I could see the whole thing flaring up again, which would be quite interesting. I also, the implication of that is that some people above the age of 60, I don't know this, but some people above the age of 60 get the heating allowance. Well, I'll be above the age of 60 come Christmas, so I'm quite looking forward to me 200 quid. That'll be fantastic. And if I then get compensation because I've somehow managed to miss out whilst not missing out on the 10 pence tax rate, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be absolutely loaded. Can't wait. And David says, if you strip out the theatre and the magic from what is written, you can find any fault in what was the objective of the whole event and writings. I have tried and cannot do it. Of course, religions seem to love the parts that I know are just floss. I don't know where that came from, David, but it was in your head, and you spat it out, and that'll do for me. 0161 228 2255, Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk, and text on 07786 206 951.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Headline news.
The Manchester-based co-op's being investigated over the price of its cigarettes. The Office of Fair Trading were also looking at tobacco manufacturers and rival supermarkets. BP is to close a major pipeline bringing oil and gas from the North Sea because of the strike at the Grangemouth oil refinery. The plant, which processes the oil and gas, is on the same site as the refinery and relies on it for power. Manchester's weather, a bright start, but there's a good chance of rain later. Highs of 14 Celsius. I'm Richard Stead.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Well, it's been a fairly quiet afternoon on the whole. We're not doing too badly on the motorways around Manchester. M602 traffic moving well from Junction 3 out towards Junction 9 on the M62, which is the turn-off for Winwick, and the opposite direction moving well as well from around about Junction 8 all the way up towards the end of the M602. Taking a quick peek to cameras on the M66, and a steady trickle of traffic for you heading down from Junction 2 at Bury all the way on towards the M60 at Junction 4. And we seem to be moving fairly freely along the M60 between Junction 23 Ashton Underline through to Junction 1 at the Stockport Pyramid, again clockwise and anti-clockwise. No major problems on public transport, everything's running to schedule thankfully. If of course you know different and you've spotted a delay that maybe I've not mentioned, call in, let me know about it if you can, hands free, and the number's 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports.
Good afternoon, I'm Ian Cheeseman. Frank Lampard won't play for Chelsea in the potential title decider at Stamford Bridge against Manchester United tomorrow lunchtime. His mother, of course, died yesterday. Wigan strikers Emile Heskey and Marcus Bent are fit to face Reading. A Latics win would secure their place in the Premier League. On-loan defender Eric Hagan is also available again following illness. Meanwhile, former Latics assistant manager Chris Hutchins has joined up with Derby County as Paul Jewell's number 2. Bolton have Joey O'Brien back for the game at Tottenham after being out for 3 weeks with a hamstring injury, and Jussi Askelainen won't need surgery on his back. Rest seems to be curing the problem. Wanderers defender Greta Steinson insists the momentum is with the Wanderers in their battle to stay up. The Icelander believes 2 successive wins has given everyone at the club a lift.
We have to keep on going, we have to keep on fighting, and we got the fans with us, which is really important, and we're just going on.
Do you feel you're building this escape route then on solid defending?
Just on team performance. Everyone is defending and everyone is attacking, and we're just building it on a team, and we're getting the results as a team.
Manchester City have Dietmar Hamann available again after illness for the visit of Fulham. Looking ahead to next season, manager Sven-Göran Eriksson says he needs different types of midfielders if he's to play a system that allows for 2 out-and-out strikers next season. And he believes that his Brazilian playmaker Elano could play behind just a front 2.
I'm sure he can do that, but are we strong enough on the midfield to handle that? I don't think we have been that this season, because you need 3 really strong and good midfielders to play like that.
That suggests, therefore, that you're going to look for midfielders in the summer, does it?
We're going to look for everything.
In Rugby League, Oldham have signed Hull KR's 19-year-old prop Luke Menzies on a month's loan. He goes straight into the squad for Sunday's visit of Rochdale. Warrington have Stuart Reardon, Paul Johnson and Adrian Morley back for tonight's visit of St Helens. Saints have Lee Gilmore and James Graham back from injury, with Sean Long, Leon Price, James Kalis and captain Paul Sculthorpe all returning after being rested for the cup tie against London Scholars last Sunday. Saints coach Daniel Anderson isn't underestimating, though, their opponents.
They're a formidable outfit, you know, no doubt about it. And they dished Hull and Wigan at home pretty extensively, you know, and they've had their away form has been as scratchy as our away form. So both teams, I think, have had a very similar start to the year. Impressive at times and disappointing at times, and by their own measures. So, look, I know that they're a very, very good team.
Commentary on that game in Manchester Sports with Jack Dearden from 7. In Rugby Union, Sale have Luke McAllister and Sebastian Bruno back for tomorrow's European Challenge Cup semi-final at Bath. There's been no play in the cricket today at Old Trafford. No decision has yet been made as to when they'll resume. Lancashire, of course, on 221 for 9 against Somerset. They're taking an early lunch, though, and we'll look at the wicket again at 20 minutes to 2, and we'll have another update. And Amir Khan has announced his next fight will be at Birmingham's National Indoor Arena on June the 21st. No opponent has yet been identified.
He should win that, then.
Life and laughs with Eamon and Jimmy.
I just let you know, I've given up the booze and I've started drinking brake fluid. My wife thinks I'm addicted, but I know I could stop at any point.
Eamon O'Neill
and Jimmy Wag.
News that an electrician has been sacked by Her Majesty's Prison Service for refusing to repair the electric chair. Said it was a death trap.
Eamon and Jimmy.
Do you know what you said before about how does a blackbird know that a worm is in the ground? Yeah. Do you know what I think? My theory is when the blackbirds are about, the worm goes, I better stick my head up, see what that blackbird is.
If your radio sounds funny on Sunday morning, you must be listening to Eamon O'Neill and Jimmy Wag.
They're cool.
Sunday morning from 9.
At BBC Radio Manchester.
I'm not about to reveal that I ever did it, and certainly not with guns. But it's being claimed. I'm just giving you this tale, that's all. It's being claimed that guns are frequently smuggled into the UK by soldiers returning from Iraq and Afghanistan. The allegations come from 2 former soldiers who were jailed for their involvement in a gun smuggling ring. They're suggesting it's a frequent occurrence. Somebody's already denying it. The Conservative MP, former Army officer Patrick Mercer, says gun smuggling isn't common, but neither is it easy to prevent. I'm just telling you that. Did you as a squaddy, I'm not asking you to admit a serious crime on it, but did you as a returning squaddy ever smuggle anything in? When you've got that dirty, great, smelly kit bag, nobody's going to search that, are they? God alone knows what was lurking at the bottom of that. 0161 228 2255. Darren in Warrington. Hiya, Darren.
Hi, Alan. You okay?
I'm not bad, mate.
Are you going to Warrington tonight?
No, but I'll be watching it on the goggler.
This is my first season as a season ticket holder.
Oh, dear.
I've changed from football to rugby.
Well done, you. Well, how do you think we're going to do against St Helens? It's going to be...
I'm still learning all the rules and stuff.
Yeah, but half the players are, don't worry.
Yeah, I know.
They change them every year.
I think I've picked the wrong... Because, like I say, it's bad enough supporting City, because they always let you down. It looks like I've picked the wrong rugby team.
Oh, dear me, no.
Build you up to let you down.
No. It's not like that, sport. You don't pick your team because you pick a winner. You pick a team because, I don't know why, but you kind of like them.
That's me.
Yeah.
Right, my point... Well, it's not a point.
Go on, anyway.
A story. I was at traffic lights the other day. I was in the passenger seat, coming home from the Trafford Centre traffic lights, and there was a bang on the window, which was bad enough in the first place, because you don't expect a bang at the window at traffic lights.
No.
And unfortunately, my window was half open anyway, and there was a bloke stood there with half a bottle of, it looked like wine, it might have been something else, I didn't take much notice. And he said, I'm looking for cannabis and somewhere to stay for the night. So he said, but I'll settle for the cannabis.
Fair enough.
And I'm thinking, oh, God, I hope these traffic lights change to green in a minute.
I bet you do. Usually you just get people cleaning your windscreen.
I know,
but he was actually buying it, not selling it.
No, he wanted it, and he wanted somewhere to sleep for the night.
Yeah, good Lord. Well, if you keep stepping out into the traffic near the traffic centre...
behind.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, blimey.
He wasn't driving, I hope he wasn't with his state of him, but I think he got back into the passenger seat.
Extraordinary.
I know, I couldn't believe it.
No. That must have concentrated your mind as he walked towards you.
I couldn't believe it. He was quite menacing as well.
Yeah. It's not a way to start a sales pitch, really, is it? Or a purchase pitch, I'm looking for cannabis and somewhere to stay. Oh, well, come and stay with me then. You're obviously such a nice fellow. Dearie me. Oh, well, thank you for the tale and good luck tonight. Cheers. 0161 228 2255. I don't know whether it's Gil or Jill. We'll find out in Abbey Hay. Gil, hiya, Gil.
All right, mate. I've had that done before.
I'll bet you have, yeah.
No, I just know about Tommy Ducks. I remember it was the brewery. They didn't even have permission to knock Tommy Ducks down. It was done overnight. It was done Sunday and and Monday morning, finished and flattened, and practically a car park the next morning. They got, if I remember right, they got a heavy fine, the brewery, but the site was worth a fortune, so don't think they were too bothered about that.
But pubs, even busy ones, and I don't know how this works out, the price of beer, but even the busy ones are losing money, aren't they? They say. Yeah. Which is extraordinary when you think about it.
True. And to carry on with the same subject, there's the monastery. I live quite near the monastery. I used to play against Franners, as we called it, at football. And that was down to the church. The church neglected it, not the council.
Well, yes, it often is.
Church.
Yeah, it often is the
You know,
church.
and, because I remember, it was going, the monastery itself, not the church, the monastery, was going derelict years before, you know, because the monks had left.
Yeah, well, they're in the same position as the pubs, really, aren't they? And that is, there's not enough people going in.
Not enough people going in and prep.
I used to work at a radio station that was based in a church, and when the people took it over from the Church of England, or the Church Commissioners, I think is their proper term, when they took it over, they then were told a great list of caveats of things that they could do and couldn't do. And every time you tried to do something with the building or the land around the building, they said, oh, you can't do that. No, it's a church. And eventually somebody said to the Church Commissioners, hang on a minute, when you had it, it was a crap hole with winos living in it. Now it's a thriving building, and suddenly all these rules that you've disobeyed for 40 years.
Yeah, true.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the churches are a little weird at times, yeah. Okay, Alan.
All large organisations are. You should see some of the rules around here, Gil. Have a good day, mate.
Right, okay,
Ta-ra now. 0161 228 2255. What's your view on what you want to say? About anything. Doesn't matter. Jane in Wigan. Hiya, Jane.
Oh, hello, Alan.
Hello, Jane.
I've been listening to you this morning, and there's been quite a few comments about this 10% business, 10p
10
business.
pence, yeah.
Yeah. And I've been reading on CFAX this morning, so I don't know if you've seen it or not, but I thought you might be interested. It says, it's written, whoever sent the letter into CFAX is TL from North Lanarkshire.
All right.
And it says, Chancellor of the Exchequer Darling and ex-Chancellor Brown are both taking stick for the latest financial fiasco. Yet neither has the least trace of financial training or even hands-on financial work experience in their CVs. Chancellors of the Exchequer with little or no financial nous sounds somewhat Alice in Wonderlandish, or should that be Blunderland?
Well, yes, quite. It is a good point, but I mean, the weird thing about the the Chancellor is he or she. I don't think we've ever had a female one. I'm not sure.
That's probably why we're in such a mess.
No, steady now. We don't want any of that. But he or she, they don't need to have any understanding of economics or accountancy, because they're usually dealing in the politics of that. All the information they want is provided to them by every possible expert you can imagine.
Yes, but I also read on CFAX a few months ago that none of them that were in one certain department, I can't remember what it was, but it was to do with the money side of things.
Yeah.
None of them had any training in accountancy or anything.
No.
Now, this is where I think we're going wrong in our country. We've got a lot of people very clever and they're getting university degrees, and then when they start a job, they're expected to be able to understand it. Now, I'm going back many, many, many years, decades. When I started work, I had qualifications in shorthand typing and bookkeeping. And my first job was at a cotton mill in the office, dispatch office, and I started typing labels to put on packages and making tea and coffee for the rest of the office staff until I learned what was actually going on, the names of the customers and how the orders were dealt with, all this just to type labels. And then after about 12 months, I got moved to the sales office. And there, I had to listen and sit in with other people doing their jobs before I could do any shorthand or typing, to learn what the business was about.
Indeed.
So that if I answered the telephone, I could speak to a customer and give them an answer.
I understand all of that, and if a person was doing a job of work, then, yeah, they need all of that. But have you ever heard the name Ballantyne?
Yes.
You know that man who's worth 350 million quid?
Yeah.
He has no accountancy qualifications whatsoever. He was an ice cream man. Have you heard the name, let's think now. Him that owns Virgin, you've heard of him?
Yeah.
Branson. No accountancy training whatsoever. Even Stephen Fry. Remember him?
Yeah.
Stephen Fry was a millionaire before he left university. No accountancy training whatsoever. Most of the people, I think you'll find, most of the people at the top of one-person businesses, never been anywhere near accountancy training. And if they had, they wouldn't have got where they are. And the reason they wouldn't have got where they are is because they know how many rules there are preventing them doing what they needed to do. And so they wouldn't have done it. They would have said, oh, you can't do that because statistics say that won't work. And it's the same really with all kinds of other leadership positions, and that has to include the Chancellor, the Prime Minister, and indeed the Leader of the Opposition. Winston Churchill wasn't good at fighting the war because he'd been a soldier. He wasn't good at that because he'd been a soldier. He was good at fighting the war because he was very, very good at, for want of a better term, lying to the British people. And enthusing them. So leadership isn't about the nitty-gritty of how it all works.
So you think we should accept lying to us?
You don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. If Churchill had looked at all the information that was coming in at that time when he said, we will fight them on the beaches, if he'd have told you what all the evidence said, he should have stood up and said, we will be speaking German within the year. Because that's what all the evidence said. That's what all the evidence said. We're going to lose this war. And that's what he should have been telling you. No, 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 no. He should have been lying to you, and he was. And he was right to do so. All those people who say, I want my politician to tell me the truth. No, I want my politician to tell me what is best for all of us.
That's the word, all of us. Not just the members of Parliament.
Quite so. Well, members of Parliament are rather different these days in that many of them are professional members of Parliament.
Yes.
But that idea that the best thing for you is true is a lie.
Well, I don't know. I still like being told the truth, Alan.
Do you?
Yes, yeah.
So if somebody stopped you in the street and said, God, I think you're an ugly cow, that would be their truth.
Yeah, right.
You'd be happy with that?
Yeah.
I must try it when I go home. I might not be in tomorrow. Don't mention you, no, I don't want any of the blame, she said. But then if I did so at home, it wouldn't be true.
No.
Jane, have a good day.
Okay, Alan, thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll stop digging now. Good on you. 161 228 2255. But it is that, isn't it? The truth is a very, very good weapon in the armoury of life. But it has the same merit as a lie in the armoury of life. Absolute truth doesn't exist, first of all. It just doesn't exist. There is no such thing as the absolute truth. There's only ever the distillation of the believable facts, and then an interpretation and regurgitation of the same. And as I say, had Churchill told the truth, Churchill would have been saying, we're going to lose. You're all screwed. I should paint some swastikas on your roof and start learning German if I were you. That's the way forward. Yeah. I think you should work for the French, the Dutch, the Belgians, and all Norwegian, all of them. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. That's the way forward. That's how it's going to happen. So if you always want the truth off your politicians, you're going to spend a lot of your life peed off. They've published... Who is they? Can't remember. They've published the list of all the members of Parliament who employ members of their family. Take nothing from this, it means nothing, but I'll tell you anyway, there are only two in our patch. Graham Brady, Altrincham and Sale West, employs his wife Victoria, so there you are, so that's good. And also, who else have we got? Oh, another one round here. Page 5. You see, you've got to go a long way before you get to the next one. Page 5. The other one is Tom Levitt of High Peaks. So they both employ members of their family. None of the other of our lot do. Take nothing from it, means now.
Still Manchester Airport, still your favourite destination, still me, Becky 1, but this afternoon from 2. BBC Radio Manchester.
Hey, while you're there, Becky, see if you can spot a British Airways plane. Oh, yeah, they're still coming, aren't they? It's October when they decide that Manchester's not worth anything. What a bunch of skunks.
95.1 FM.
DAB Digital Radio.
And the World Wide Web.
This is Manchester.
BBC Radio Manchester.
At 1 o'clock, the Manchester-based Co-op's investigated over the price of cigarettes in its supermarkets, and a major North Sea oil pipeline will close because of a strike at a refinery in Scotland.
And Frank Lampard won't play for Chelsea against United tomorrow.
Well, most of us will see some light rain from time to time this afternoon, and top temperatures will get to 14 Celsius.
And watch out for slight delays on the M56 at the Sharston Link heading towards Manchester at Junction 3 at Bagley, whilst roadworks continue.
Good afternoon, I'm Richard Stead. The Manchester-based Co-op are being investigated over the price of the cigarettes in its supermarkets. The Office of Fair Trading are also looking at tobacco manufacturers and rival retailers including Tesco's and Sainsbury's. Michael Pullen, a competition lawyer at DLA Piper, says what's being alleged is the same as price fixing.
In order to fix prices, you would need an express agreement between two manufacturers, and the OFT have not found evidence of any agreement, which is why they can't allege price fixing, but they are alleging price coordination. And there is a subtle legal distinction, but to a layman, in practice, the effect is the same.
More people than first thought could end up being affected by this weekend's shutdown at a huge oil refinery in Scotland. Workers are walking out over a row about pensions, and the two-day stoppage is forcing BP to close one of its major North Sea oil pipelines. The big problem, though, is drivers panic buying fuel north of the border. The Prison Officers Association's admitted its members are losing the battle against crime in jails. A senior prison officers warned that some inmates are finding it so comfortable in jail they'd rather not escape. Brian Caton from the POA says drugs are a major problem.
Prison has become a place where you go into prison with a fairly hefty drug habit and could indeed end up worse by the experience of prison. That is not the reason that all those years ago I made a determination to enter working in this field, and neither did my colleagues. Prison officers having to work very, very hard, but they are losing the battle against crime in prisons.
Almost 1 in 5 young people in the Northwest have tried self-harm. That's according to a survey commissioned to march the launch of the Young People and Self-Harm Conference being held here in Manchester today. It also found 2/3 of youngsters between 11 and 19 knew someone who'd harmed themselves. A man's been arrested in Warrington in connection with a scam to con people out of their money and cash cards. Police say 3 well-dressed people have been working together. One stands close to a cash point, memorising PIN numbers, while another distracts them long enough to steal their card and money. Police are still looking for 2 other men. A clinical trial to prevent cervical cancer here in Manchester is being hailed as a success, with a 70% take-up. Schoolgirls across the region have had a jab against HPV to prevent the disease, which kills 1,000 women here in the UK each year. Loretta Brabin from the University of Manchester says it'll now be rolled out across the country.
All 12-year-old girls every year will be offered this vaccine because human papillomavirus, which is what the vaccine is against, is actually a sexually transmitted infection. It's the virus that causes cervical cancer. Now, it's very important for the vaccine to work that it's given before any of the girls have had any sexual contact that might expose them to that virus.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Ian Cheeseman.
Frank Lampard won't play for Chelsea in the potential title decider against Chelsea tomorrow lunchtime. His mother died yesterday. But there's better news as far as United defender Nemanja Vidic is concerned. He's been included in the squad for the game. Alex Ferguson says he's hopeful that he will have recovered from the stomach virus that upset him, of course, in midweek. The Wigan strikers Emil Heskey and Marcus Lucas Bent are fit to face Reading. A Latics win would secure their place in the Premier League. Meanwhile, former Latics assistant manager Chris Hutchins has joined up with Derby County as Paul Jewell's number 2. Bolton have Joey O'Brien back for the game at Tottenham after being out for 3 weeks with a hamstring injury. Manchester City have Dietmar Hamann available again after illness for the visit of Fulham. In Rugby League, Oldham has signed Hull KR's 19-year-old prop Luke Menzies on a month's loan. He'll go straight into the squad for Sunday's visit of Rochdale. Tonight, Warrington have Stuart Reid and Paul Johnson and Adrian Morley back. That's for the visit of St Helens, who in turn have Lee Gilmore and James Graham back from injury. Sean Long, Leon Price, Jason Kalis and Captain Paul Sculthorpe are all back after being rested for the cup ties. In Rugby Union, Sale have Luke McAllister and Sebastian Bruno back for their European Challenge Cup semi-final at Bath. And there's been no play in the cricket today at Old Trafford. They've taken an early lunch and hope to get underway again at 20 minutes to 2.
BBC Radio Manchester satellite weather with Heather Stott.
Well, it's not a fabulous end to the week. It's cloudy and we've got some light rain during this afternoon, and it is going to feel breezy later. Top temperatures getting to 14 Celsius.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Story just come up on the wires saying a young man was murdered when he was mistaken for his older brother. I know. I'd just like to reassure our Steve he's perfectly safe. There's no way they could mistake him for me. He's nowhere near as handsome as me.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones.
What's up with your face?
1 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Dave in Hazel Grove, are you?
Hi, Alan. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Oh, just a quick one, Alan. I was in Gatley yesterday afternoon. Delivering some parcels, and I was just in the back of the van. I heard this lad shouting, and didn't quite hear what he was saying. And then I closed the door, and this big lad came running past the van, being chased by another lad. I wasn't sure what was going on, but he was going like an express train. So anyway, he caught him and had him by the wall of this house. And I walked up slowly, thinking to myself, not sure what's happening here. Anyway, what had happened is the first lad, had robbed a small store on the main road there in Gatley, and ran off with the takings out of the till. So this lad had chased him, stopped him, stuck his hand in his pocket, retrieved the money from the shop. Anyway, the lad got away, who'd pinched the money, and this lad walked back to the shopkeeper. I went with him, and he handed him the cash back.
Wow.
And I thought, you know what? That's what I thought, Alan. I thought, so often you see stuff, don't you, where people, and no one gets involved, do they? Mm. And he had to run really hard to catch this lad. I mean, he was a fit lad, but I thought, he needs acknowledging for that, I think.
He does.
Because he's that's a selfless act. It could have gone terribly wrong, that. I mean, but it didn't. And I thought, and I was really proud. I thought, I wanted to pat him on the back, but you feel a bit awkward, don't you? But I thought, what a nice thing to do, that, the bloke's been robbed, and he's been and chased him and got the money and took it back. I thought that was a really nice thing to do, that, and didn't hang around, didn't make a big deal out of it. He just handed him the money back to there, and went on his way. I thought, flipping that,
good on him.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for telling us. It
brightened my day up anyway.
It's brightened mine now.
Yeah.
Good on you.
Human nature. Yeah, lovely.
Cheers, mate. Have a good day.
Mate.
Ta-ra now.
Bye.
There you are, you see. Isn't it fascinating? Ted in Moston says, I believe that this country will soon break out into violence on a scale which can only be described as civil war. Senior, unnamed members of the Labour Party have said that the only thing stopping a race war, as suggested by Enoch Powell, was the fact that the economy had been strong for the last 60 years. Now, with the credit crunch, anything is possible. We're going to end up with a sort of positive apartheid like in Northern Ireland, with communities separated with massive concrete walls, but not before hundreds of people are dead. Within the next 3 years, Enoch Powell will be proven right and the myth of multiculturalism will be smashed. God help us all, says Ted in Moston. 0161 228 2255. Another Ted, this one in Audenshaw. Hiya, Ted.
Good afternoon, Alan.
And you, sir.
It's a long while since I spoke to you, because I was on the television. Now I've got a little radio, so I'm back on the radio again.
Marvellous.
And it's about, well, you set off by about the McCanns this morning when you opened up, about him making a mistake. The biggest mistake he ever made, well, they ever made, and they're both doctors, they give a free child, child at night time when they want to go out for a meal. They have a free child service in those flats. They offer them a free child service.
Yeah, I know. I've heard this story before. The hotel complex offered a free childminding service.
That's right. Well, they could have used that.
Well, they could, but their decision, and I've heard them explain this before, or I've read what claims they said. And that is that you don't know who works for those services. You have no way of checking their credentials, as it were, and it could be anybody. Indeed, ironic though this may sound, a paedophile could be working in that thing, because you've no way of checking. So they trusted their own judgment and trusted, well, we now know look. They trusted to look and statistics the care of their children, and they've paid and will pay for the rest of their lives a high price for that. But but if you go to an hotel and the hotel said we've got a free baby mining service, you have absolutely no idea who that is. Yeah. And also, of course, if the child does wake up and a stranger comes into the room, again, that might not be every time the best result. So it's not cut and dried by any means.
No. The other point is about the MP's expenses.
Yeah.
They're going to be a big check on what they've been spending, aren't they?
They say there's going to be, yeah.
Well, I was watching the finance bill being read for the first time on Tuesday night.
By Jove, you're brave.
Yesterday, but I was too late. And they started about... Well, they do all bits and pieces first, and about 12 o'clock, there's about 50 MPs on one side and 50 on the other, and they're debating this subject all through till nearly 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And then there's a division. And then they go out to vote, and then when they come back, there's over 600 votes being cast. Where the hell do they all come from?
Well, the answer is they are about the place. They are about Parliament. Within the Houses of Parliament, and indeed the...
Or they'd be outside in restaurants and pubs.
Well, yeah, I was going to come to that. And in some of the restaurants and other premises around Parliament, well, first of all, within Parliament, there's a thing called the division bell.
Oh, yes, I know about that.
Just before a vote, a bell rings and telling everybody, and like Pavlov's dogs, they queue up to go through the lobby they were told to queue up to go through, usually. Well, that bell, there are also extensions of that bell in various parts of London. Predominantly the restaurants in and around Westminster, but of course these days they're all on text anyway and pages. So if there's a division that the government or indeed the opposition think is important, they will text their members en masse and tell them all to get back and vote. So if you're having dinner with a Member of Parliament, if you were having dinner with a Member of Parliament in a restaurant near Westminster on Tuesday evening, I think it was, he would leave at some point to go and vote.
That's what amazes me, where they all are, so they'd be claiming all the expenses for all this.
Well, they won't be, because they don't get expenses just for meals, because indeed, if you go to dinner with an MP, there's a very, very good chance you're paying. A very good chance. And if the meal's quite an expensive one, they have to tell people, they have to declare it in the members' register. But that's part of the job. And many of them won't have been at restaurants. They will, in fact, have been at meetings. They'll have been in committee meetings in other parts of the House. They'll have been doing all sorts of things.
It amazes me where they all suddenly come from. On each side during the day.
It's like dropping a currant bun and watching the ants arrive. Good on you, Ted.
Okay,
cheers, mate. They all lurk about their place, waiting like Pavlov's dogs for the bell to go. And as I say, the analogy of Pavlov's dogs, the reference to Pavlov's dogs, is not is not entirely inaccurate in that, of course, they do tend to form up and queue and go through the lobby they're told to go through. That's modern politics. Not the best kind of politics, but the only kind we've got. It's getting on for 1:15. Eddie in Whitefield with you in a mo.
Your Sunday morning lie-in with Mike Shaft.
Why do you think religion and politics are such sensitive subjects, and why do we shy away from them?
I suppose religion gets terribly personal. Politics is about putting your values and your vision into the way that public life operates. So you're bound to have to bring religion into politics. There's no way you can avoid it.
Mike Shaft.
How did you come to faith?
I've been brought up in that church all my life and kind of taken it for granted, really. And that's where this has sort of then started to grow.
Manchester's faith, spirit and life's difficult questions with Mike Shaft.
It's a bit off the wall, isn't it?
Sunday morning from 7 on BBC Radio Manchester.
Yeah, very good day to you. How are you? Excellent. 01612282255. Eddie in Whitefield. Hi, Eddie.
Hiya. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Good. I've been sat here listening. I'm going back to last week when you were talking about... have you found the button in the bottom of your phone? That switches from pulse to tone?
No.
You haven't found it?
No, I forgot to look. You've just reminded me.
Yes. Well, the guy that was piddling... It took about 20-odd minutes, didn't it?
Yeah.
To this guy to explain, and he explained... what do they call it? Tautology. And he's going round and round, and it's not the box, it's not... And I'm listening to this thinking, good jeepers creepers. It's the button on... Because all systems, like your mobile phone, goes... Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, and that's tone.
Yeah.
Now, pulse is... Anyway, more importantly, Alan...
Go on.
I've been away for quite some time. I've moved to Huddersfield. I'm back in Manchester now, in Whitefield.
Welcome home.
And I've missed you for the last 10 years, but I'm sure you used to be on about 9 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, I've been on all sorts of times, but yes.
And I knew I was missing something. You are what... I don't want to, rub your bum in things or anything, or...
Please don't.
You know what I mean?
Just don't rub it at all. In things or rub it.
I love the people that come in and they're talking to you, and you are so educated that... Can we not have more people like you in the world?
Well, I've done my best.
Can't you clone yourself?
I could indeed clone myself.
Right.
And then they could sing Bring in the Clones.
Oh, you've got the education, you've got the life experience. I know you're knocking on a bit now, aren't you? You're in the 60s.
Not yet.
Not yet, really?
Well, don't say it like that. But I'm just on the cusp.
I'm just thinking, it's about 30 years ago I was listening to you, so you must have been a teenager then.
I was not but a lad.
Okay.
I'll be 60 in October.
Okie cokes. So, that's not bad.
Well,
You get your bus pass.
I will, yes. I'm quite looking forward to it. I've been trying to find a way of selling to BBC Radio 4. I do little jobs for them every now and then, but I've been trying to sell them. I've come up with this idea that I shouldn't be telling you this because someone will write it down.
Okay, yeah.
But it don't matter. I probably can't do
Plagiarism.
it. But getting on a bus, like some of them wrinklies who got their passes on the 1st of April. Who've gone from, like, the north of Britain, Berwick-on-Tweed, down to John O'Groats, or not John O'Groats, down to Devon, Land's End. And I've got this idea that I'll go round the whole of the coast of Britain on municipal-type buses. But it'd probably take about a month, and I can't get a month off here.
Nah.
And it wouldn't really work if I had an helicopter.
Well, you're self-employed, so you can't really do that.
Okay. Well, I feel sure that the other parts of the BBC would pay me, but I don't want a month off. But it does sound fun, doesn't it?
No.
Meeting all... That's as honest an answer as I could have.
No, it doesn't. Listen, have you got time to go through a sort of issue that I'm trying to deal with? And I'll try.
Go on, you'll have to be sharp because
I'll try.
We'll get kicked off and we'll see where we go.
I've got a colleague who's been dismissed from a major supermarket, and he was dismissed. He's a baker, and it was the supervisor, actually the manager, and the supervisor walking around checking the stock levels and all that, and they caught him chewing away on a pasty that he just baked, and it was a dodgy pasty. So they actually took the opportunity to get rid of him on that basis. I'm trying to get through to the company now to see if he can be reinstated, and I'm just getting no answer whatsoever. What do you think? I mean, obviously, go on, I'll let you.
Well, you say a colleague. Are you a trade union official or?
No, not at all, no.
Are you a lawyer?
No, he's just a colleague of mine.
Well,
a friend of mine.
A friend of yours. Well, they're not going to talk to you because
Yeah,
they have
exactly.
no
I'm not in a
obligation.
position,
Exactly. The issue of whether he should be sacked, it depends in the end of what his terms of employment are.
Yeah.
And it's all very well saying that, well, he was just eating, you describe it as a dodgy pasty.
That's correct, yeah.
I feel sure the company would argue that they don't actually have dodgy pasties on their premises, but you might mean one that was
That's correct,
not the right shape or something. Well, okay. But if you allow your employees to consume the bits that are those bits of food, if you will, that are a bit wonky, then when you see one of your employees eating food and you go over to him or her and say, "Oh, you're eating the bloody profits there, pal," and he says, "No, this one was a bit wonky," and I even know a bloke, a number of blokes who have they're entitled to drink the contents of broken packaging.
Good grief.
You would be surprised how many broken packages they have.
Yes, well, no, I won't.
I even know a milkman. The milkmen used to be allowed so many broken bottles per day because it happens. And I know a milkman who broke exactly that number every day. And the reason he broke them was because what he used to do was he used to sell the milk to somebody else, take the money, and then, when he got the empty bottles back, if he got one that had not been washed, he broke it. And he took the bottle in and said it broke. And every day he managed to make sure he broke exactly the number he was allowed to. So he enhanced his wages, and what he was actually doing, in a small way, but nonetheless doing it, stealing milk.
Right, I agree with that.
So
But
somebody-
what I'm trying to say is this individual, do you think it's unfair, or does he have to sort of apply, or...
Well, the reason they have rules such as that, the reason they say you will not consume any food, whether you find it on the floor or whatever, is so that if a manager sees you eating food, he knows that you're eating food that you should not be eating.
Easily.
There is no defence. Oh, it's a dodgy pasty. You're not even allowed to eat the dodgy ones. So...
Leave it for the rats.
Well, leave it... I'm sure that supermarket doesn't have rats. But leave it for wastage, the natural wastage. Every organisation has wastage, and if they want to stop people stealing from them, they have to make it so that if they're found with that in their hand, they must be breaking the rules. They don't have to accuse him of stealing, which would be hard to prove. They just say the rules are you don't...
No, they haven't. They've dismissed him on the basis of unreliable work.
Well, if they've dismissed him on the basis of unreliable work, the pasty incident is irrelevant. Which has no bearing.
Well, it affects his future, doesn't it? And he's absolutely devastated.
but
he
the
lives in Leeds, by the way, and
But the issue that you need to deal with, if you were dealing with it, if you were representing him, you can't.
I'm trying to, yeah.
But if you were
afford to.
if you were representing him, and you went in there and said you've dismissed him because of eating a dodgy pasty.
Yep.
And they say, no, we've dismissed him because his work wasn't up to standard. And then they present you with all the opportunity, all the occasions when his work has been established as not being up to standard. You're going to lose the case because you will not be armed for the battle they're going to fight.
Right.
So find out why they sacked him and deal with the evidence they present.
Excellent. All right, Allan.
All right.
Don't forget the tone, pulse.
I won't forget the tone.
No,
or
I'll take that
pulse.
on board, and obviously it's a losing battle that I'm in.
Well, I didn't say that. I just said you need to look at the rules.
Because I do appreciate everything you do.
Well, look at the.
I love listening to you. It's absolutely amazing.
All right, well, look at the rules of his employment, and if there is no rule that says you cannot even eat the dodgy stuff, then they can't sack him for eating the dodgy stuff. But there is such a rule. He's hung by the curlies.
I appreciate your time.
Have a good one. 0161228 2225.
BBC Radio Manchester. Headline News.
The Manchester-based Co-op is being investigated over the price of cigarettes in its supermarkets. The Office of Fair Trading are also looking at tobacco manufacturers and rival supermarkets. BP is to close a major pipeline bringing oil and gas from the North Sea because of the strike at the Grangemouth oil refinery. And appeal court judges in Edinburgh have ruled that a male stripper's truncheon is officially not an offensive weapon. They agreed Stuart Kennedy had a reasonable excuse excuse for carrying a baton as part of his uniform. Manchester's weather mainly cloudy this morning and this afternoon, and a chance of rain later. Highs of 14 Celsius. I'm Rebecca Crabtree.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
That's the number. You can say what you like and do what you like. We're here anyway, because we've no shame. 0161 228 2255. You got something to say? That's good, Gerrit said.
Helping Manchester, help Manchester. BBC Radio Manchester Interaction with Linda Kay.
It might seem hard to believe, but 1 in 3 children in the UK live in poverty, and some of the highest levels are found in Manchester. The government's promised to end child poverty by 2020, but it could be way off target.
Over 4 million children in this country are affected by poverty. Parents are having to choose between, do they buy their children a winter coat, for example? Do they give them a hot meal? Or do they give them a hot bath? Poverty is an extremely real issue, and it's happening in Manchester, so it's affecting people in your local community.
Paul Grundy is from Save the Children, who campaign hard to make changes for the poorest children. And as change starts with spreading the word, they're looking for people to speak out against child poverty.
What the Speaking Out volunteer would be trained to talk about would be the work that we do in this country, in the UK, but also overseas. You might talk at a secondary school, you might talk at Manchester University, Rotary groups, it could be anything along those lines. Volunteers are so important to kind of help Save the Children spread the work about what they do.
If you'd like to help Save the Children, there's full training and expenses. Call Interaction to find out more. 0161 244 4321.
Poverty is a real issue in this country, and we need people to help us deal with that.
BBC Radio Manchester Interaction with CSV Broadcast. 0161 244 4321.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Doreen says, Alan, you feeling comfortable with the McCanns saying that they made a mistake is surely assuming that they didn't accidentally sedate and kill and dispose of the child. Remember, they are 2 of 3 suspects linked to the disappearance of their child. Or have you forgotten that? Maybe Jenny McCann is using this little speech as a smokescreen to divert attention from the fact that they are complicit in the child's disappearance. That's Doreen. Well, I've not forgotten that they are 66.6 recurring % of those who stand as suspects, though they don't stand accused. But I do know, from what I've read, that the Portuguese police have said it is unlikely, without a body, it is unlikely that any prosecution will be brought on the basis of the evidence, forensic or otherwise, but predominantly forensic, that they have this far. Now, if there is no forensic evidence or insufficient forensic evidence to point the finger at anybody, I'm not comfortable with pointing the finger. So, yes, they are still, are they called alguidos, but they are still suspects, official suspects, but circumstantially so, according to my interpretation, because it's always an interpretation because it's had to be translated, but my interpretation of what the investigating officers has said. But I take your point and grateful to you for it. Christopher in Middleton, I've a great affection for Victoria Baths, as it was my school baths in the 50s. I learned to swim there when I lived in Ardwick, and I've been back to take a nostalgic tour around it after the restoration programme. There's a Freudian slip, the restoration programme. But realistically, what future has it as a swimming baths, when even the new multi-million-pound baths just down the road from the BBC were not even deemed fit enough to host the recent World Swimming Championships? I never saw a cockroach when I was there in the 50s, and I was a regular user due to the free bath passes that we earned by taking various swimming tests. I thought it was great, but then again, we never had an inside toilet, a bath or running hot water in our house until we were rehoused in 65. So it was a great place for keeping clean with the hot showers and carbolic soap. Yeah, absolutely. And how would it stay in business if it did reopen? Yeah, incredibly difficult to achieve. On the subject of the multi-million-pound baths that were deemed not good enough for the World Championships, that's very cruel. It's not a case of they weren't good enough, it's a case of they don't have enough seating for the audience they expected. Or should I say, more accurately, the audiences they hoped for, because my guess is they got nothing like the number of people they expected. Alan in Walkden. Hi, Alan.
Oh, yeah. There's all this about the prisoners, the prisons and...
Yeah, nobody's breaking out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just to the point, I've been listening to Radio 5 Live.
Oh, dear.
About prisoners being cussing, having tellies and PlayStations and all that. If that's true, what about the global warming effect? Nobody's brought that point to it, have they? They're having the tellies on all day. It's adding to the global warming, isn't it?
Well, I suppose it must be, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd just like to make that point.
OK,
right?
well, you've made it, and very well made it is too.
Okay.
So what do you think we should do instead?
Well, they never used to have them before, did they, tellies?
They didn't have them before, you're right. They didn't have them before.
Yeah, they should have a room they go to and watch the tellies, don't they?
Yeah.
Did they used to have that at one point?
I think that's how it used to be, yeah. That's certainly what it was like in the NAFI. We never had tellies in our rooms when I was a soldier, so it's a bit weird that prisoners do have. But given that a lot of prisoners are locked in their cells for 23 hours a day, they wouldn't be able to go to the central room.
Right, yeah.
It's not like, on Porridge, where they all go and play snooker and all that. Apparently it's not like that these days in prison, and prisoners spend an awful lot of their time locked up.
Yeah. Well, they used to have batteries, didn't they? They didn't used to have electrical points. They used to have radios, didn't they? And they used to have to buy batteries. And things
They did used to have to buy batteries. Unfortunately, batteries turned into a weapon.
Right.
You throw a battery at someone, it doesn't give them an headache.
No, but I heard on the Radio 5 Live, there was a prison officer on, and he said they grab tellies and throw tellies at you, so what's...
Yeah, well, quite.
More than a battery.
Yeah, well, it is, but you can generally see a telly coming.
Yeah.
If somebody throws a telly at you, A, you've got to be fairly close. Because who can throw a telly 40 yards? And also, you'd see it.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah.
And duck.
Yeah, but I mean, having one telly in a room, what do you call them rooms on their own, is less global warming emissions than...
That is true. There's no escaping that. You're absolutely right. We're causing a global warming problem. It's the prison's fault that the icebergs are melting.
That's right, yeah.
Good on you, mate. Have a good day. Cheers. 0161 228 2255. Talking about Winston Churchill and truth earlier, Keith in Blackpool says, my granddad used to do a fair mimic of Churchill's fight them on the beaches speech. Hey, they will fight them on the beaches, we will fight them on the landing grounds and all that. He used to end it with, and I'm standing on the steps of this aeroplane just so that I can see all your happy faces. Yeah, that's a thought, isn't it? What would have happened? Would Churchill have stayed and taken his medicine, which would have been death? Or would he have done a runner to America? I don't know. Joyce in Oldham. Hiya, Joyce.
Hello, Alan.
Hello.
Hello. Well, I'd like to speak about the paying of council tax.
Okay.
In Oldham, we've been told that you can't pay council tax at a council office or any other council bills. Then you have to pay it either at a post office or a shop displaying a pay zone sign.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of April, I paid my council tax at a shop displaying this pay zone. And I got a receipt for it. And then yesterday I received a red letter saying there's no, that I hadn't paid. So I told them that I'd paid it. And I told them where I'd paid it, when I paid it, the time I paid it. And according to them, there's no record that I've paid. So then they also said in the next breath that people who'd paid their poll tax, either post office or other pay zone, there was also the same thing, that no record of it being paid. So it doesn't make sense that you can't pay a council bill at a council office. And I was wondering if you knew if there were other councils in Manchester who had the same policy.
I don't know is the simple answer. There are many organisations that choose not to take money over the counter because that is a very, very expensive process. We dealt with this yesterday in a different forum, but it is a very expensive process. You've got to have secure premises, you've got to have people who are trained in that specific role, and then you've got to convey the money from where it is to where you want it to be. Now, the post office already have, and pay point places and that, their retail outlets, they already have cash handling facilities. And the local authorities up and down the land, I don't know how many in Greater Manchester, but local authorities up and down the land have decided that they will no longer deal in the actual cash. What they will do, yes, you can pay by direct debit, you can pay by cheque and all the rest of it. If you want to pay by cash, you go to places that specialise in taking cash off people. Your particular case, where they appear not to have, or they appear not to have a record of your transaction, presumably you still have your receipt.
Yes, I do.
Then with your receipt, you needn't worry too much. No. Presumably it's a receipt not just for the money, but a receipt for the money as payment of your council tax. Yeah. So in those terms, you needn't worry too much. If the local authority continue to press you, and in the unlikely but possible event that they take you to court, when you go to court, if you show that receipt to the judge, he or she will have some very stern words to say to the local authority.
Yes, but, I mean, surely, instead of sending a letter to me, they should get in touch with those who they appoint to take the money.
Well, they can't do that because I don't know how many post offices or pay point places there are in Oldham, but all they've got at the moment, the local authority have they have Joyce in Oldham on their books, and next to it there is no payment. Now, they can't, every time they have no payment, they can't write to every place they should have got a payment from, which includes every bank and post office in Britain. They can't do that. So what they do is they write to you and say you've not paid. You then write back and say, oh, yes, I have. Here's a photocopy of my receipt. And they then have that receipt, or the photocopy of it, and can then go and look for that payment. But they couldn't get in touch with everybody that's a pay point place and find out if Joyce in Oldham made a payment.
I see, but it seems ridiculous, really. You know, I know you've explained the whys and wherefores, but council bills, and you can't pay them in the council office.
Well, be assured that...
secure, shouldn't it?
Well, no, it shouldn't. Not secure to take cash. If you want your local authority to pay people to stand round waiting for you to take the money, and then there'll be those that say, well, OK, where should we do it? At the town hall? Right, let's do it at the town hall. There'll be people who say, well, I live 12 miles from the town hall, and it's going to cost me a fortune to get there. Why can't I go to the post office?
Yes.
And then they're going to have to pay people to stand round there in secure premises waiting for you and your ilk, your fellow council taxpayers, to turn up to make payment. Then they've got to pay a security firm to come and take the money off, having already spent £1 million on every premise to make it secure. Then they've got to come and take the money from you, and again paying a security firm to take it to the bank that it would have gone into anyway. So it's an expensive process.
Yeah.
And
sorry.
Go on.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say that post offices, I mean, they do other business besides, don't they?
They do, indeed. They are gifted at it.
Yes.
Many people get their pension at the post office and pass a chunk, some say far too big a chunk, of it back over the counter to pay their council tax.
That's right, yes.
So it's very convenient for many, and it's a lot cheaper for the local authority, which means, of course, it's a lot cheaper when they're working out how much council tax you have to pay. Now, even if you did pay at the local authority offices, even if you did, it's still possible that the payment will go awry, because we do not have an organisation yet, apart from me, that's infallible. So mistakes could still happen. You could just so easily be phoning me, or someone instead of you could be phoning me and saying, I paid it in at the town hall and they've lost it. So they're as guilty of cock-ups as anybody else.
But, well, councils, they've never been renowned for doing things as they should do, have they?
Well, you must make your own judgment on that. Have a good day, Joyce.
And you, Alan.
Where would we be without them? We'd be waist deep in Clark. We wouldn't have a police force. There'd be no libraries. There'd be very few theatres. The roads would be in a mess. The streetlights would be out. Where would we be without the council? We'd be in a terrible mess. Next Thursday, you have the opportunity to choose who you have. In most places, choose who you have representing your voice on the council. All you have to do is vote. It's not that hard. If you want to find out who won, who lost, and what was the reason for everything, then from 10 o'clock next Thursday night, we've got traditionally annually almost, isn't it? Annually, we've got the election broadcast. I'll be in the chair along with the wonderful psephologist, I love that word, the wonderful psephologist Professor John Tong, one of the leading political experts in our country, and he'll be with me. I'll be talking rubbish, as is my wont, and he'll be trying to make sense of it. Every year a challenge for the lad. There you are. 0161228 2255. Simon in Haywood says the Associated Press reported last night that only 1 in 5 who lost out under the abolition of the 10p tax rate would be helped by the government's planned compensation package, according to experts. Analysis of the options by the Social Market Foundation think tank found the only affordable package would cover just 15 to 20% of those affected. The chief economist said making good the losses of those being targeted would cost more than $4 billion compared to the sub-$1 billion cost for the proposed package. So, if 80% will still be losers after the compensation package, who's going to help them? Are we not in danger of curing one problem to replace it with another? Simon, we are always in danger of that. But the Social Market Foundation are, to a certain extent, extrapolating from a 3-word answer, almost. So we're going to have to wait and see what Alistair Darling proposes by way of compensation, and I assure you that once he does, the economists of all kinds will be, I think the modern phrase is, all over it like a rash. As I say, there's a debate in Parliament on Monday brought about by the Tories asking for firm commitment, for firm proposals to be put before Parliament rather than some airy-fairy nonsense. Yeah, well, what do I know?
BBC Radio Manchester. Headline News.
The Manchester-based Co-op is being investigated over the price of cigarettes in its supermarkets. The Office of Fair Trading are also looking at tobacco manufacturers and rival supermarkets. BP is to close a major pipeline bringing oil and gas from the North Sea because of the strike on the Grangemouth oil refinery. And appeal court judges in Edinburgh have ruled that a male stripper's truncheon is not officially an offensive weapon. They say Stuart Kennedy had a reasonable excuse for carrying a baton as part of his uniform. Manchester's weather mainly cloudy this afternoon with a chance of light rain. Highs of 14 Celsius. I'm Rebecca Crabtree.
I don't care if it isn't a weapon. You're not bloody hitting me with it. Put your truncheon away.
Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Take care if you're travelling on the M602 heading westbound away from Manchester. It seems there's been a collision around Junction 1 at the Eccles interchange. Now, the police stopped the traffic for a short time where the M602 becomes the M62 around Junction 12 to recover 3 cars to the hard shoulder. But as a result of that, the traffic started to build up quite quickly and a lengthy queue has formed as a result of that. So do take care if that's the way that you're heading out of Manchester along the M602. Park Lane traffic in Macclesfield not doing too badly despite the fact that it's closed off between Crompton Road and Cambridge Road with a diversion signed locally. And no reported problems on public transport. But of course, if you know different, call in and keep us up to date. Hands free on 0161 244 4951. I'm Cara Banks.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports.
Good afternoon, I'm Ian Cheeseman. Frank Lampard won't play for Chelsea in the potential title decider at Stamford Bridge against Manchester United tomorrow lunchtime. Of course, his mother died yesterday. There's better news for Nemanja Vidic, though. He's in the United squad. He's hoped he'll recover from the stomach complaint that ruled him out in Barcelona. Wigan strikers Emile Heskey and Marcus Bent are fit to face Reading. Latics boss Steve Bruce says there won't be wholesale changes at the club if they secure their Premier League status for a 4th consecutive season. With 3 games to to go. The Latics need to beat Reading tomorrow to be safe.
There'll be a few acquisitions, I'm absolutely convinced of that, but there won't be any major shake-up because I've been absolutely delighted with the standard of the squad I've got. You know, since I've come here, we're in the last 20 games, I think, on them 20 games, I think we're 8th in the championship, in the Premiership in terms of form. So I've seen very, very good things, and some young players who are very, very talented, and if we can add 1 or 2 to them, then obviously we can keep making strides.
Bolton have Joey O'Brien back for the game at Tottenham after being out for 3 weeks with a hamstring injury. The Wanderers defender Greta Steinson insists the momentum is with them in their battle to stay up. The Icelander believes 2 successive wins has given everyone at the club a lift.
We have to keep on going, we have to keep on fighting, and we got the fans with us, which is really important, and we're just going on.
Do you feel you're building this escape route then on solid defending?
Just on team performance. Everyone is defending and everyone is attacking, and we're just building it on a team, and we're getting results as a team.
Manchester City have Dietmar Hamann available again after illness for the visit of Fulham. Up to 2,000 Rochdale supporters are expected to make the short trip to Bury tomorrow. Simon Ramsden could return for Dale at right back. Barnet have opened an extra section at their Underhill Stadium for Stockport fans, making the trip south. And County consider recalling Paul Turnbull from relegation-threatened Altrincham, but have allowed the Robins to keep the player. Alty need to win at Weymouth tomorrow to have any chance of staying in the conference. They also need Halifax to lose at home to Stevenage. And FC United could rest key players for their last regular league game of the season ahead of next Tuesday's playoff match. In Rugby League, Oldham has signed Hull KR's 19-year-old prop Luke Menzies on a month's loan. He goes straight into the squad for Sunday's visit of Rochdale. Warrington have Stuart Reid and Paul Johnson and Adrian Morley back for tonight's visit of St Helens. In Rugby Union, Sale have Luke McAllister and Sebastian Bruno back for tomorrow's European Challenge Cup semi-final at Bath. There's been no play in the cricket today at Old Trafford. Lancashire, of course, 221 for 9 against Somerset. Reporting from Old Trafford on the prospects of a resumption is Chris Malaband.
Yes, disappointing indeed, Ian, here. We were hoping to get underway after an early lunch taken at 1 o'clock, but umpires Cowley and Holder haven't even come out since the end of that lunch interval at 20 to 2, because the rain is still falling here. We've got drizzle in the air. It's been persistent for most of the morning and early afternoon, so although it's not really fallen in much quantity, it's enough to keep the players from the field. So no play so far here today. Lancs still 221 for 9 in their first innings.
And what about the prospect of a combined Lancashire-Yorkshire-Durham 2020 team in an English 2020 league in a year or two? Is that going to happen any more than the rain stop?
Difficult one to answer, Ian. Jim Coombs certainly thinks not. I've just spoken to him, and his view is that he doesn't support the concept of having a combined Lancashire-Durham-Yorkshire team. He very much wants to keep the team based as Lancashire, and that will be it in its entirety. He did mention that he would still support the concept of city cricket, perhaps having a team from Manchester involved in a competition in that format. But with all the discussion at the moment about what an English Premier League might look like in terms of 2020 franchises, that was one that Jim Coombs wasn't keen on, the combining with Durham and Yorkshire.
OK, Chris, thanks very much. We'll hear more, of course, on that story a little later on in Manchester Sports. And just one other story, Amir Khan has announced his next fight will be at Birmingham's National Indoor Arena. It'll take place on June the 21st, although they've yet to name his opponent.
It's all right on past records. If they do name him, no one will have heard of the bugger.
We're stretching Becky.
You've had more than a jar of face cream. You have 20 years in the business. You're not telling me that you just get the Vaseline out.
No, I don't.
No, you've had work. You have, haven't you?
Don't be cheeky. She's very cheeky.
More Manchester, more Becky.
Do you not stand in the kitchen ironing and listening to music?
I hardly ever iron.
Yeah, no, now I look at you, yes, obviously you don't do much ironing, do you?
More Becky than ever.
Will you be wearing high heel shoes when you're 70?
Of course I will.
In that case, why are you concerned about it?
No problem. Look at me heels. I've got 4-inch heels on.
Becky wants.
What a picture of domestic bliss that is.
This afternoon from 2
at BBC Radio Manchester.
Jim in Manchester. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Alan. I wonder if you could possibly advise me at all. I'll have to be very careful. I won't name anybody or any organisation, apart from one. I asked your chap who picked up the phone that I think I've heard you said in the past that you used to work for the CAB? You've had
a long time ago, yes.
Yeah. What it is I've been off work, and the statistics are that my employer will pay me full salary for 6 months, and then
I presume you've been off work on sick.
That's right, yeah. Signed off by my doctor.
Okay.
I'm not at the 6-month mark, and I'm hoping to return to work very soon, so things should look up. But because things have been very, very bad of late, I have been faced with the possibility of not being able to return to work for different reasons. And with that in mind, I was recommended to approach a couple of benevolent funds and societies. I won't name them. As you know, like most people, we've got a mortgage and car loan and credit card debt, etc. What it is, these benevolent funds have suggested that I might like to have a chat to a money advisor that they use, and I quite happily agreed to that. And what it is this money advisor said to me, if you're not able to work full-time and you've got X amount of debt and mortgage, etc., we have 2 young children, by the way, she said, I would recommend that if you can't afford to pay your mortgage and you are on half pay, then you must sell your house or go onto an interest-only mortgage. Obviously, that will still leave you with the capital outstanding. Or I would recommend, very seriously, a shared accommodation ownership. And I would suggest that you look into these. So I looked into the shared accommodation ownership and found that despite what the lady said, we could live in our area where we live now and the children can go to the same school. That wouldn't be the case at all. And what's worried me is the fact that I've spoken to the FSA in London who aren't allowed to give out money advice, as you probably know. But I did a little bit of investigation and I found out that the lady who's giving me this advice has got no financial qualifications except that she's Citizens Advice Bureau trained. And I was trying to find out what that meant, because I rang the CAB the other day with a view to trying to get some information. And first of all, they said to me down the phone, would I like to become an advisor? And I thought, that's jumping the gun a bit. One day, perhaps in the future, but for now, I was ringing about.
Okay, well, because we have a lot of time. What's your question,
sure.
Jim? What's your question?
The CAB is a respected organisation.
That's a statement. What's your question? What's your question?
Do they offer any qualifications in training their people who work for them to give out money advice?
Qualification there's no formal Citizens Advice Bureau qualification that gives you letters after your name or something like that.
Yeah.
There is a very, very comprehensive training programme for advisors. How I define that, from start to finish, although you wouldn't be perpetually at college, as it were, but from start to finish, it would probably take you about 12 months before you would be free to advise the public without supervision. And even then, those who are, whether been doing it 2 weeks or 20 years, even then their work is regularly checked. So yes, they are fully trained. Whether they're fully qualified depends on your definition of qualification, but they're all fully trained. There is a fairly comprehensive. Personally, I believe for amateurs, and I hope they're not offended by that, but for amateurs, the CAB advice worker training is probably the best in the country.
Yeah,
probably.
I would have no doubt about that. Because,
so that's the answer.
Right. Can I just say one thing connected with it that not upset me but shocked me? When she said you must sell your house, we went to our local CAB office and sat down, made a proper appointment and sat down, and they were a bit horrified and said selling your house isn't the first step you should take if you lose your job or you're not able to work. The other options should be considered and not just that one. And with it being the first one that this lady said we should go down, I panicked, and just felt like we ought to get a bit more advice. So this lady in particular now is actually retired, and she's still giving out financial advice on a freelance basis.
Well, that's, you see, the problem is, you said you wouldn't mention any organisation but one, and the one you've mentioned, you're giving the impression that you were given advice by an advisor of that organisation. And from what I now deduce, it wasn't an advisor of that organisation, although previously she may have worked there.
I think all they said was she got her training from that, you see.
Well, that...
So presumably she worked for them as well, I would imagine.
Well, that's past tense.
Yeah.
The fact that someone did work for an organisation and was trained by the organisation, but is now operating freelance, you can't then say it's the organisation's fault that the information is inaccurate. One of the things they say about the CAB is, for CAB workers, is you should never advise anybody without using the information files that they have. Now, I'm not going to go into details about the information files, but they're phenomenal. Extremely. They used to, when I was there, and it was in the 70s, when I was there, the information files filled 2 4-drawer filing cabinets. That was that long ago. They're considerably bigger than that now, but obviously are now computerised. With regards how to deal with your financial difficulties, the one thing I would say to anybody is you prioritise the bills. Credit card bills and things like that are at the very, very, very bottom. You start with the bills you need to live. And those are, of course, your bills for your mortgage, your heating and light, your food, and all of those.
Can I say one thing she said about bills? She said...
I'm not really bothered about a person who was trained some time ago and is now practising as an amateur. I don't really want any more advice of hers going on the airwaves unless somebody listening, in case somebody listening thinks, oh, that's what you're supposed to do. So I'd rather not hear more of what she said.
All right, Alan, fine,
from that point of view. But speaking about you, what you need to do is to get some proper advice from a proper organisation on that organisation's premises. Go along and talk to them. And they will tell you, as indeed you've already said, that selling your house isn't the first option, and indeed is quite possibly not a realistic option at the moment, because your house will be worth slightly less than it was worth when you first came out of work, with the way house prices are going. But you need to two things. Well, one thing that all people who are having financial difficulty should do. All people. Just one thing to start with, and that is write down what they owe and who they owe it to, and then put it into a league table, if you like, a league table of which is the most crucial. Well, first of all, the mortgage. Look at the mortgage. But that is the first thing you pay. Whatever else happens, that's the first thing you pay, your mortgage. Because you'll lose your house if you don't. And if you have your house taken from you for not paying your mortgage, then the costs of doing that come out the equity. So, again, you don't only lose your house, but you lose any money you might have had in that house, or some of it. So that's the first thing you look at. Then you look at all the other principal bills. Council tax, you go to jail if you don't pay that, so let's get it paid. But let's make sure you're paying the right amount. You've got all the discounts you're entitled to, and all of that. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but you get down to the end, at that holiday you had 2 years ago that you've not finished paying for yet. You write to the credit card company, and you say, I've got no money, I can't afford to pay you, I'll offer you an amount that you can definitely pay, like £1 a week or £2 a week or whatever. But that's what you do.
Can I ask you one question about the credit card scenario? Is it true that if you weren't able to pay, which we are at the moment, luckily, but if we were in a position where we couldn't pay our credit card bill, it would be turned into secured lending, like a charge on the property?
Not automatically. It is possible that could happen, but it's not probable.
Right, I see.
But it is possible.
It was expressed that that would happen.
It won't happen automatically. In other words, if you write to them and say, I can't pay you, they will not immediately apply for a charge against your house. But all things are possible.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, thank you, Alan.
Good on you. 0161 228 2255. And Jackie says, what is a sophologist? I can't afford it. I can't find it in the dictionary. It's actually a cephalogist as opposed to soph, because they're not in any way sophisticated. Well, at least John Tong isn't. Anyway, a cephalogist, and it's a person who interprets statistics, most usually political statistics. So they look at the numbers and they interpret them into what is being expressed by those numbers. That's it. In simple terms, I think in fairly accurate terms, but that's what it is, a cephalogist. It's a kind of arithmetician, a statistician, any of those things. But there you are. So that's what it is, a cephalogist. Usually related to elections and other such manifestations. In fact, I'm trying to think, and I can't think of an occasion when I've seen the word used in anything other than in political statistics. So I wouldn't guarantee that it's a pure statistician, for if it was, we would just say statistician. Exactly. Anyway, there you are. Becky wants at the airport today. Apparently she's looking for BA planes. She'd be better off at bloody Gatwick, wouldn't she? Anyway, I shall be back tomorrow. Tomorrow, between 7 and 8, we're talking politics with someone from each of the big three parties. Ta-ra now!
Are you a budding poet? Can you write a faith-inspired poem?